Welcome back to the Torque Test channel. Today we're excited to bring you the 1500 foot-pound rated Ridgid high torque R86211B. The highest spec'd, biggest, baddest cordless half-inch impact made by TTI, who also sometimes goes by the name Milwaukee or Ryobi. Despite that, it's also the cheapest half-inch high torque out of TTI in the modern age of impacts. So what gives? Is this just a bargain, or are all its stats phooey? The 1500 breakaway and 1100 fastening that it advertises are basically just the M18 high torques numbers with 100 added to each. I envision the Ridgid development arm of TTI pointing at a 2767 on a chalkboard and saying, basically this thing plus 100 everywhere. But would TTI even allow something like that? Milwaukee is their top of the line, right? You'd think not, but maybe this is a brief sneak peek at the Gen 3 M18 high torque. At least on Home Depot's website, where you'd find the Ridgid, it's a good $70 in savings for the bare tool, so you might find yourself willing to risk it to find out. Today we're going to do that for you, and we'll be doing that with a 3 amp hour octane battery from Ridgid because this tool says octane on it, and even though Ridgid has since moved on to their max output batteries mainly, the 3 amp hour octane performed well in our mid-torque series comparing Ridgid's other garbage batteries, and since it's a single row of 21700 cells like a CP 3.0 high output from Milwaukee, and that CP 3.0 performed the same in our testing as an XC 5.0 that we'll be using on the M18 high torque today, they offer the most apples to apples between these two tools. Of course, there are bigger octane batteries, but if this needed one of those to beat something, it really didn't beat it at the end of the day. If the 2767 said high output on the side of it like the octane does, or if this was the next generation of Ridgid's high torque without the octane labeling, we probably would have switched things around in the battery front. At 8.8 inches long and 6.3 pounds, the Ridgid is promising more even in person without looking at the specs. So let's see that power. Our first test is called working torque, 5 seconds and forward. The M18 is up first, which historically absolutely kills this test against basically everything, even the Thor. And here's the Ridgid high torque. .590, that's the highest half-inch working torque run we've ever had, and it matches the 3/4 inch Makita 40 volt we just tested, at least in this test. Not bad, and we ain't seen nothing yet. Our next test is max torque, 10 seconds in reverse. Here's how the M18 2767 did. .728, the highest of our half-inch cordless in this test to date. Let's check out that Ridgid octane. .738. With 60 to 70 foot-pound gap on the curve in spots? From a Ridgid? Okay, confession time, don't be mad at us. As some of you may know, we've had this Ridgid for a while now. We picked this up not too long after testing the M18 as a matter of fact, while Ridgid was still octane. And as you've seen, it really brings the beans. Our early TTC self, not having a lot of cordless high torques under our belt yet, figured, is Milwaukee's 2767 just not all it's hyped up to be? And we started out on our journey to buy and borrow all the high torques you've seen on this channel thus far to answer that with a resounding, no, we were dumb, what we're thinking. The M18 high torque is about as good as it gets from what we've seen. The Ridgid just puts it down, and we got lucky with our first couple options to test. Cheers to TTI. 733 is the highest we've seen to date from a cordless in this max test, and it beats you up less to boot. The M18 has gotten one of our higher wrist-breaking scores at 7.5 with what feels like severe onset Parkinson's, and the Ridgid is a whole different sort of feeling. Heavy radial arm twisting like a quarter drill, and gets a 7.0 for that action, the preferable type of wrist tweaking if we had to choose. So let's see it, our third and final test, the best case scenario from both tools, batteries fresh off the charger, their best runs. Here's both the Ridgid and the M18 duking it out on screen. .791, and it wasn't close either. The M18 high torque never really entering the conversation in this test. We noticed the Ridgid battery really likes to be fresh off the charger compared to others in this test. But along our high torque journey, it's not only Milwaukee that's brought the heat. Bosch's Pro Factor recently left an impression on our ranking by slyly requiring its 8 amp hour 21700 cell pack with the tool. So let's see that added to the mix. That's 793 or 2 foot-pounds up on the Ridgid at the end, but looking at that dyno curve, it sure looks like a win for the Ridgid. Even with the single row of 21700 cells, in the Ridgid's case, which in our experience don't really add up to equaling 2 rows of Samsung 18650s amp-wise, and our high output testing confirmed that, this is going up against Bosch with 2 rows of 21700 cells. Well, if you like that, let's try 3 rows of 21700 cells in the form of an HD 12.0 pack on that Milwaukee high torque. Here's what that looks like. Killing it in the dynamic torque down low, but Ridgid's still bringing the heat in the mid-range with the HD 12.0 equipped M18 coming out 10 foot-pounds ahead against a 3 amp hour pack that we picked up for about 60 bucks. You could do much worse within the Ridgid line battery-wise though. Here's how the high torque performs when you accidentally find yourself using one of their entry-level batteries. .463, and a curve shape we've basically never seen before. This one really surprised us. Obviously the tool was going to be worse. We've seen that before, but completely flatlining? It basically gave up 6 seconds in and said, nah, I'm done, calling the reinforcements. We're anxious to get to the rank chart to see how this places. Considering its larger size and super duper high torque claims, we're curious if its pros outweigh the cons in the points. Starting at the bottom for now, the Ridgid's power runs get turned into points as so, 59, 74, and 79. Really some top stuff there. At 8.8 inches long, the Ridgid gets dinged a little for not fitting in as many places, but still it's a function of power, so 89.9 foot-pounds per inch, not bad. The next column, oh man, 1100 foot-pounds fasting torque, that's the highest we've seen from anything ever. We don't even know of another half inch higher than that. It gets 72 or 72% of its claim. Luckily for Ridgid, it doesn't cost a fortune and thus gets 51.8 as a function of power and price, the highest we've seen in the points from a cordless so far. That totals 425.7 points, or enough for 4th place, squeaking out just ahead of the M18 high torque from the same factory, and second among the cordless. The Bosch, while making similar power to this one, advertised just 740 foot-pounds and surpassed that, versus the Ridgid's 1100 spec, so it gets to experience some spoils on the rank chart of a few more points on the Bosch. Calling brands out for their crazy specs sort of is the point of the channel after all. So we had 2 major takeaways today. One, how did TTI allow this impact to be made? They must have known it would outpace the 2767, right? For less coin? Would they really let their Ridgid arm pull one over like that? And our second point is, buy yours while you can. Use the link below, walk to a store, go buy Zyke Bike if you like, any way you can, while you can. Ridgid is getting rid of this tool this year and replacing it with a slightly smaller, less powerful, more expensive version that we feel, and everyone we've talked to in the industry mostly agrees, is TTI sort of slapping Ridgid on the wrist for making this thing bigger and badder than the 2767 and relegating Ridgid to likely share the powertrain from the upcoming Ryobi high torque, but we're just sort of guessing there. We'll be testing that new Ridgid for sure when it comes out to see what it can do. Our high torque series is somewhat coming to a close for now, so we can focus on other size tools. But fear not, we'll be sprinkling in more high torques in the future here and there as they come out, like the Ryobi, or just because we want to see something possibly beat this Ridgid, like maybe the Ingersoll Rand cordless. Stay tuned and click subscribe. Check out our cool t-shirt shop in the description, and thank you for watching.